as Urban Meyer likes to say, championships are won in November, and tonight all across the Buckeye State, 16 teams will do just that. Regional Championship Friday in the Ohio High School Athletic Association as we are into week 3 of the playoffs, meaning teams are just 3 weeks away from winning state titles. Welcome into Friday Night Huddle. I'm Aaron Goldstein in for Dave Bacon tonight. Pleased to be joined by the guys from cleveland.com, Chris Fedor, Dan Lobby. Should be a lot of fun over the next 4 hours. We crown some champions.
Yeah, regional championship week, always a great weekend. This year, Division I doing their regional championships this week as opposed to next week. So regional champs everywhere onto the state semifinals, and some teams looking for their first trips to the state semifinals this week too. So should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the mix here, guys, because if you're talking about tonight, you've got the big powers, you've got St. Ignatius, St. Ed's, teams that are usually there. But you also have some other teams that are vying back for the first time in a long, long time. Talk about Warren Harding. Last time Warren Harding's been in this position has been, what, about 20 years ago, something along those lines? So I like the mix that you've got the newbies with the veterans.
You mentioned the newbies. Sycamore's in the regional final for the first time in history. You talked about Division I moving to Friday night. You think they're ever thankful that they got to do it this year? We're in mid-November, and we're talking 70s outside.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the game's tomorrow. It's going to be a complete different, a mess out there. Should be interesting, though, to get the nice weather for Friday night.
Yeah, they're certainly not regretting that mistake or that decision, I should say, tonight to have these games on Friday nights as opposed to Saturday. So St. Ed, St. Ignatius very happy among the other Division I schools.
We've seen battles between the two of them even late in the regular season that have been bitter cold.
Oh,
but,
yes.
Should be a lot of fun tonight. Well, we are keeping our eye on a lot of games tonight all across the state. 16 games in total going on. We've got reporters at a whole bunch of them, and we'll be checking in with them throughout the night. Of course, you mentioned the St. Ignatius St. Edward game in Region 1. Lorain Olentangy, the regional championship in Region 2. And Chris mentioned Hudson, Warren G. Harding certainly should be a good one there. Olmsted Falls and Anthony Wayne. They'll square off, as well as NDCL and Perry in Division 4. Kirtland, Cuyahoga Heights, that'll be an interesting one to watch. Region 21 in Division 6. Shelby and Steubenville, that's a Division 4 game. Pickerington Central and Wayne, that's the Region 3 in Division 1, and that's the winner of that one is going to end up playing Sycamore and St. X. Sycamore St. X, a 7-5 matchup down there. As you guys look at that list and the whole list of games all across the state, which one jumps out to you, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit biased, but I'll go with St. Ed's and St.
Tough
Ignatius.
choice there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, as an alum of St. Ed's, I'm going to go with that one, of course. The rematch from Week 10. Week 10 was a game that St. Ed's, you don't see that very often. You're talking about a team that has won back-to-back state titles, getting a running clock against their rival, something that they certainly didn't want. But the question I have coming into tonight, guys, is, okay, how much did St. Ed's learn from that game against St. Ignatius? Was St. Ed's holding something back against St. Ignatius, thinking that this could be a potential matchup down the road? And can they slow down the St. Ignatius running attack, which ran up and down the field against St. Ed's, something that the Eagles certainly aren't used to?
A big offensive line, too. That's a big reason why. You know, we talk about it with the Dallas Cowboys all the time, right? How good they are because of their offensive line. St. Ignatius is kind of built the same way. They have a really good running back, a quarterback that can run, too, and it's just really difficult. And that quarterback, when he has time to throw the football, incredibly dangerous. Good dual-threat guy.
Dan, another game you're looking for?
Well, I like the Olentangy Liberty Patriots and the Lorain Titans. Not a lot of people talking about this game, but you've got some star power here. You've got Brendan White, an Ohio State kid, has played quarterback, but he lines up at wide receiver. He lines up at tailback. He does a little bit of everything. He even plays some defensive back as well. And his quarterback, Mitch O'Cooley, a sophomore, has been very good in this postseason. So I want to see what he can do as well. And then on the other side, Lorain, really one of the best stories, I think, this year, and we've talked about the star power that they have over the weeks. And the guy that I really like, Deshaun Brooks, the cornerback, has just shut down some of the top receivers in the area. And last week, shut down Ty Henderson, 1,200-yard receiver. Ended up with 97 yards last week, but a lot of that came when Brooks was cramping up and was out of the game. So that's a really interesting matchup that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. And I mentioned a lot of teams haven't won regional titles before, 2 of them in this game. So somebody's going to get their first regional title tonight.
Olentangy has a couple of impressive wins. They beat Glenville early in the season. They really probably gave a shock to everybody. For more on this game, though, let's head out there. Our reporter Nate Klein there with a preview.
Hey, it is Nathaniel out in Mansfield, Ohio for the Region 2 final between the Liberty Patriots and the Lorain Titans. Now, both teams are looking for their first region title tonight. The winner will get a chance to face off the number 1 final winner, either St. Edward or St. Ignatius. So here's what you need to know. Ohio State commit Brandon White, who's going to be suiting up for Liberty tonight, scored 5 touchdowns last week. So obviously this Liberty team is very, very good on offense. But Lorain is as well. Carlos Chavez just reached the broke the city record for the most rushing yards this season with over 3,000. I'll have more in the story later. You can check that out. But again, tonight is going to be just about who can control the football, who can commit the least number of turnovers in this game. So the game is not until about 7:30. Players are just getting out here on the field right now, so that's why I get a chance to step out on the field. But otherwise, it's good weather for football. I think it was about 74 reached high today. I could be wrong. I'm not a certified meteorologist, but check out more updates on my Twitter account, as well as check out the guys in the studio at Friday Night Huddle.
All right, thanks, Nate, so much. Let's take a look at the Region 2 bracket and how both these teams got here. One trend that we will notice all night long is the number of 3 seeds that advance. 15 3 seeds are still alive compared to only, I believe, 5 or 6 2 seeds. So it's the year of the 3 seed. Lorain with wins over Olentangy and Dublin Jerome. Olentangy Liberty beating Orange and then Medina. They put up 45 points last week in that win over Medina. What stands out to you guys here?
Well, in that win over Medina, too, they held the Bees to their second lowest scoring output of the season. And that Medina offense can score some points. So, you give up 27, and maybe you look at that and say, oh, 27 points, that's not great. But against that Medina offense, that's pretty good.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is a lot of teams go into a game against Olentangy Liberty and they see that 12-0 record, and it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, saying, oh my goodness, this is the team that we have to get through. For a team like Lorain, though, battle-tested. They beat Sandusky before Sandusky lost last week in the playoffs. That was the only loss for Sandusky. They beat Bedford at the end of the season. They beat Cleveland Heights at the end of the season. They've already gotten past one Olentangy, got past Dublin Jerome. So a team that's battle-tested, and I don't think they're going to be afraid of looking across the field and be intimidated by that 12-0 mark, because they've played against some quality competition this year that I think is going to help them tonight.
You know what's sort of fun about this matchup, too, and is it's pitting a Columbus area team against a Cleveland area team. And with Division I going back to the 4 regions, the past couple of years when there were just 2 regions, these happen all the time. You don't really get as many of these anymore because it's all broken up. And these 2 teams have to each go to Mansfield and play there in the middle, sort of the middle of, I don't want to say middle of nowhere, but middle of the state there. It's a lot of fun to see these 2 teams go. It'll be fun to see what ends up happening. I'd say the one game that I'm watching for is Kirtland and Cuyahoga Heights. Last week, or I should say 3 weeks ago, Cuyahoga Heights beat Kirtland 21-0. The first time they had beaten the Hornets since 2008. That included a couple of playoff games that they lost to, too. So it's certainly a long time coming for Cuyahoga Heights. The Redskins' defense, really impressive in that game. They didn't allow Kirtland across midfield until the 3rd quarter, but both teams have been on a roll since then. Watching out for Brett Lowther, the Cuyahoga Heights quarterback, the district offensive player of the year. They outgained Kirtland 290 to 131 in that game. But of course, Kirtland going to be looking for some revenge. They've got Joey Torek, their big-time running back, 1,300 rushing yards so far on the season. Also Dylan Falco at QB. He's thrown for 683 yards, run for more than 500 yards. So it should be a lot of fun to watch that one. There are 2 big rivals there, and you never know what happens when they get together.
Yeah, it's great. And it was great for Cuyahoga Heights to get that win, because that's always kind of the, can you beat this team?
Right.
And obviously, if you're going to win a state title in Division 6, you've got to be able to beat Kirtland. And last year, played them tough in the first game. And then Brett Lowther actually said, in the second game, it was tough. Weather wasn't on their side. That was a quote from a story leading up to this game. So the weather's certainly going to be on everybody's side tonight, I think, and it won't be a factor in this game. And it'll be interesting to see, has Kirtland kind of carried that loss with them, and how is that going to affect them? Will it be positive? Will it be negative? And as always, when you play Kirtland, if you're Cuyahoga Heights, how do you kind of deal with that rushing attack? You've shown you can beat them once, but can you deal with it again?
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is always so fascinating when you're talking about rematches, teams that have already seen each other during the regular season, there's not as much of a feeling out process. Because it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to scout this team, we're going to look at what they do, what they can't do, and we're going to try and duplicate that. but once you actually feel it and you get that familiarity, it can be a little bit different. These two teams have played against each other. So Cuyahoga Heights knows what Kirtland wants to do. Kirtland knows what Cuyahoga Heights wants to do. And it's going to come down to a game of execution. And that's what I love about these. There's not going to be that feeling out process.
It's going to be who has the best players on the field and who's playing. And, last year was 34-13 Kirtland. So really both teams feeling like maybe they've got a little revenge in mind.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked a lot about Division I. We talked here about Division VI. Well, how about Division II? Chris mentioned Hudson and Warren G. Harding. They're coming up tonight in the Region 5 championship game. As we look at check in on that one, what do you guys feel like is the key there?
The thing that I think is fascinating about Hudson is they have become this team that is comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's funny because I was talking about that same thing with Kyrie Irving of the Cleveland Cavaliers just about 2 weeks ago. He said one of the differences for him is that being around the team and all of the pressure that's on them and being under the microscope, he had to learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable positions. And Hudson is a team that when they trail, they seem to bring out their own best. So that's something that I think is fascinating with the Explorers and something that every team needs going into the postseason is, okay, how are you going to respond when you're down? And are you going to be okay coming from behind? Hudson is that comeback team where it seems like, they say it all the time, but quote-unquote team of destiny.
Yeah, they've trailed in the fourth quarter in their last 6 games and won 5. The trails are tied in the fourth quarter, last 6 games and won 5 of them.
Well, you know what would make me feel uncomfortable?
What's
is
that?
watching Lynn Bowden rush for over 300 yards in the previous week against in their last game against Chardon. Yeah, pretty good defense and a pretty good football team. That would certainly make me uncomfortable if I'm Hudson. But what they did against Aurora last week was really impressive. They outgained them 323 to 260 total yards. They really held Aurora's running game in check for the most part. Held Aurora to 7 points, which is incredibly impressive to do against the Greenmen. So for Hudson, they're always a good program, right? This is a chance for them to get their 3rd straight state semifinal. This has sort of been a program year for them. Maybe they don't have as much talent as they have usually had, but when you're Hudson, you just know how you're going to play, and I think that's something they've fallen back on this year.
You mentioned their 3rd straight. It's their first 2 that they're trying to get to their 3rd straight. The last 2, their first 2, so impressive.
Yep.
Let's get more of an update for that game. Ryan Isley is at the stadium with more. Ryan?
Good evening from Twinsburg's Tiger Stadium. I'm Ryan Isley for cleveland.com and Friday Night Huddle. Tonight I'm here for the Division II Region 5 regional final between the Hudson Explorers and the Warren G. Harding Raiders. Hudson comes in having held a powerful Aurora team to just 7 points in a 14-7 win last week in the regional semifinals. And if they are to advance to their 3rd straight state semifinals, they're going to have to stop another powerful offense as the Lynn Bowden-led Raiders come in averaging over 40 points a game. Bowden has rushed for over 1,200 yards in his last 6 games with over 20 touchdowns. Bowden comes in as the All-Inland District Player of the Year offensively. So Hudson is going to have their hands full if they're going to win this game. It's up to the Hudson defense to see what they can do with Lynn Bowden. I will have more updates as the night goes on, as well as highlights over on Twitter. So keep up on Friday Night Huddle and cleveland.com.
All right, thanks, Ryan, as we take a look at the Region 5 bracket. Guys, what stands out to you here?
I might have shortchanged Lynn Bowden, actually. Let's not forget he threw for over 100 yards last week, too.
That's right.
476 yards of offense. Harding had 530. That's a lot of yardage.
I think the thing that stands out to me here is Chardon going down against Warren Harding, because coming into this, we were looking at teams that could possibly make a deep run into the postseason, and Chardon stood out because they're unconventional, they're very difficult to prepare for, and they're the kind of team that had the offense and the defense seemed like they were clicking on all cylinders going into the postseason. So for them to lose to Warren Harding, it got my antennas up about what this Warren Harding team is capable of. So obviously, even though in week 1 of the postseason they struggled against Brecksville's powerful offense, They're a team that is very, very capable of making a deep run, and they showed that last week beating Chardon.
Those two teams got there in two very different ways. Harding a 49-31 winner over Chardon. Hudson, meanwhile, just 14-7 over Aurora. So offense versus defense should be interesting to see how they mix. Meanwhile, let's move over to Region 6, a battle of a pair of 9-3 teams, Olmsted Falls and Anthony Wayne. Olmsted Falls coming off a win over Westlake 49-21 last week, while Anthony Wayne beat Avon Lake, the 8 seed, 14-6. Guys,
what a strange bracket. I mean, I think a lot of people looked at this bracket at the beginning and said, all right, we're going to get Avon Midview in the regional final. That rematch, those teams always play great games. And then those two teams go down in the first round. And now you've got Anthony Wayne and Olmsted Falls, just like everybody thought, I guess. But it's a credit to those teams to just take advantage of the upsets in their region. When the favorites go down, that's an opportunity. And both these teams have taken advantage of that.
I mean, sometimes you need a little help. Of course, when it's this kind of situation, you need a little bit of help. The thing that I wonder going into tonight's game is, can Olmsted Falls throw the ball? Or are they going to be forced into throwing the ball? So far in their first two playoff games, they haven't been forced to throw the ball, and they've still been able to win. How are they going to react? Or is it even going to happen where somebody takes them out of their comfort zone, takes away what they do best, force them to throw the ball?
We are just about 13 and a half minutes from all these games kicking off. Let's get more on this game. Olmsted Falls against Anthony Wayne. Here's Tim Bielek. Tim?
This is Tim Bielek of cleveland.com and the Friday Night Huddle, coming to you tonight from Sandusky Perkins High School for the Division II Region 6 final, with number 6 Olmsted Falls battling number 4 Anthony Wayne for a trip to the state semifinals. The Bulldogs come into tonight's matchup looking for their first regional title since 2002, and their offense has been looking extremely good this postseason, scoring 80 points in their first 2 wins. The triple option attack led by fullback Spencer Linville, who's got nearly 2,000 yards rushing this season. The 240-pound fullback gets the ball nearly every other play, and it's a tough task for a defense to bring down, but this is a good defense in Anthony Wayne. They've allowed just 13 points in their first 2 wins this postseason. They forced 5 turnovers last week, defeating Avon Lake 14-6 to get to this game. Make sure you're following me on Twitter for updates throughout the night at Bielek_Tim, as well as the hashtag Friday Huddle, and I'll have more updates and highlights throughout tonight's game as we decide our Region 6 champion.
Guys, anytime you have a 240-pound fullback, it's a good idea to give him the ball every other carry, right?
I mean, my goodness. Spencer Linville, a man amongst boys out there, 41 carries in last week's game, and head coach Tom DeLuca said, well, he's built for something like that. Not everybody can sustain that kind of pounding, but when you're talking about the makeup of Spencer Linville, he's the guy that they have ridden all the way to this point, so why would you stop now?
This game might be over by about 9 o'clock.
That's exactly
with
right.
these two teams, because
Tim got the good assignment there, right?
Olmsted Falls didn't throw the ball last week. On the other side, Anthony Wayne, you've got Nick Schneider. He carried the ball 30 times last week for 161 yards. He's kind of been forced into being their quarterback / tailback here in the postseason. So both of these teams want to run the football, and Chris, you mentioned it. For both of these teams, if they're put in a situation where maybe they're down 2 scores late in the game, or down, whatever the deficit, and they need to throw the ball, it's going to be interesting to see if they can do it.
All right, let's move over to Division 4 and another matchup that we'll be keeping our eye on, and that is Steubenville, the Big Red in action tonight as they move on to the regional final. What's one thing that you watch for them?
Well, I mean, Steubenville is Steubenville, right? They're one of the most intimidating teams out there. For Shelby,
they are Steubenville. That is
for Shelby, when you face that team, there's always kind of that. You have to get over that shock, I guess, or that fear of the program, and it's. I'm curious to see how Shelby reacts when they look across the field and they see that uniform looking back at them.
The thing that stands out to me for the Big Red, number one, they're not used to losing, and they're not used to losing at home. And St. Vincent St. Mary was able to go to Steubenville, beat Steubenville there. You ask yourself, how does that team respond? Well, they respond with a win against Ursuline, and they've ripped off all these wins, and they're leaning on the defense. They're leaning on the identity of who they are. And that's the mark to me of a team that can make a deep postseason run, is how do you respond after your first loss? And they've been at their best since that loss against St. Vincent St. Mary.
And for Shelby, 1 loss, it's just Sandusky,
right.
A 10-win team. So, Shelby's going to say the Whippets, we're pretty good.
Yeah, both teams 11-1 on the season. Steubenville's won 6 in a row. Shelby's won 7 in a row. One of them's going to go down tonight.
What
One
is
of
a
them-
whippet?
Oh, where did we pull that one out? Did you pull up
I
the
mean, that's
picture?
their nickname, but I don't know what that is.
WHIPPETS. Impressive. All right,
Whippets.
maybe Jeff Sabo knows what that is. Let's go to him for a preview.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Sabo here for the Friday Night Huddle. I'm outside of Paul Brown Stadium in Massillon as the Steubenville Big Red are going to take on the Shelby Whippets here tonight, 7:30 p.m. The regional championship is on the line. Taking a look at the Steubenville Big Red, they have been in this position many, many times before. They have made the playoffs 15 out of the last 16 years. They are led by Jacob Bernard in the backfield and Javon Davis at quarterback. Now, taking a look at the Shelby Whippets team, they are 11-1. They are led by Devin Shorty Brooks in the backfield. 38 touchdowns on the season, 2,300 yards, total rushing. Brennan Armstrong is the quarterback. He is a Division I college recruit, so they definitely have a lot of weapons to work with. And then talking with Shelby's head coach, Eric Wool, throughout the week, he has a very determined football team. He said that they cannot turn the ball over and that they need to get the running game going against the Steubenville Big Red here tonight. The action starts at 7:30, and we're going to have the highlights for you as the game goes on.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. We talk about Shelby. You know, this is not a familiar position that they're in. They haven't been in the playoffs since 2010 before this year. We're making a nice little deep run here.
But that's always the thing that you wonder, okay, a Steubenville team, a program, very comfortable in this kind of situation, been there, done that. How is a team like Shelby going to handle that when they look over and they see that helmet with the big S on it, and against a team that is so battle-tested, so playoff-tested? The experience edge is obviously on Steubenville's favor, so that means Shelby, the Whippets, by the way, it's a dog. It's a small dog. We looked it up.
Bred for
Glad we
racing.
got that
Bred
cleared up
for racing,
early on
so
in the show
fast
here.
dog.
Bred for racing, small, fast dog. You wonder, they're not going to have the experience advantage, so what is it that they're going to lean on?
And defensively, look, they've scored points, but they had a stretch in the season where they had 2 straight shutouts, gave up 7 points, had a little bit of an outlier against Bellevue and gave up 34, and then came back and had 7. They've only allowed 25 points in their first 2 playoff games. So this is a team that can play a little defense against a very good Steubenville offense.
We talk about Steubenville, and they're a team that went to the state championship game last year and lost to Bishop Hartley.
Yep.
They've been in the Final Four for the last 3 seasons. When you have that much experience going this deep into November, does it make it tough as a program to get up for these games at all? You feel like it's been there, done that, or?
No, I think it's advantage them. They understand how to prepare for these games. Their kids have been in these situations before. They grow up wanting to be a part of this sort of thing. And I think that's so big when you get into the postseason and you've got such a finite time to get ready for the opponent and you don't know them all that well. The advantage usually goes to the team with the experience. They understand how to prepare for these kinds of things.
Yeah, and I just think the expectations of the program don't allow you to take a
Right.
team lightly, because you don't want to be that team that doesn't make the playoffs. You don't want to be one of the teams that goes out early in the postseason. So I just think that reputation of that program, you know, there's a lot of programs like that around Ohio. You think of Massillon too. You want to be the team that goes deep in the playoffs. You don't want to be one of the teams that people look back on and say, oh man, that was kind of a disappointing run.
Right.
Let's stay in Division 4 for a second. Over in Region 13, it's Notre Dame Cathedral Latin taking on the Perry Pirates. Now, guys, we got to make sure we keep all of our Perrys straight because we're getting this deep in the playoffs, and still 2 of them are alive. Perry Pirates are 12-0 this season, the number 1 seed in Region 13, taking on a 9-3 Notre Dame Cathedral Latin team. As we take a look at the bracket here, Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, impressive. They came from behind to beat Crestwood in that opening round and then knocked off Mooney, so a 7 seed all the way into the final. Meanwhile, Perry holding serve against Holy Name and Woodridge as they battle out tonight in the finals.
You know what I love about this matchup? Both of these teams advanced in games where they made a winning 2-point conversion. For Perry, that happened last week in overtime. 42-41 against Woodridge. They went for 2 in overtime. They won the game. First round of the playoffs for NDCL. Some crazy things happened on the extra point attempt. They lined up, had a penalty, defense had a penalty. They ended up going for 2 and winning the game 28-27. So you had a couple of teams there that have advanced by being aggressive and going for 2, and you love to see that.
I think the thing that has helped NDCL is the schedule that they faced. I know that we talk about this all the time, but are you going to test yourself in the regular season so that when you get to the postseason, you have some kind of feeling of the step up in competition and what's coming? They played against Canton Central Catholic earlier this year. They played against Benedictine. They played against Archbishop Hoban, and they didn't beat Hoban, but just being on the field against that, it lets you know how far you have to go and what you're going to see as you move forward into the postseason. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've been able to beat number 2 Crestwood and then number 3 Cardinal Mooney, because they play playoff teams throughout the course of the regular season.
I was at Notre Dame Cathedral Latins' first game against Crestwood in the playoffs, and talk about being able to bounce back and resiliency. They started that game by allowing a kickoff return for a touchdown, so they were down right away. Yep. And frankly, in the first half, they didn't look like the better team, but they really put it together in the second half, able to move on, and then, of course, beat Moody, and now here they are in the regional final. Let's head out to the field, get more on that game from Bill Mabel.
Hey everyone, Bill Mabel from cleveland.com doing a quick game preview of tonight's championship game in Division 4, Region 13, between top-seeded Perry, who comes in at 12-0, and number 7, Notre Dame Cathedral Lanton, who comes in at 9-3. For Perry, high-powered offense is what they bring to the table. They're averaging over 43 points per game, 43.6 to be accurate. Quarterback Colston Brewster threw for over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns in last week's win over Woodridge. For Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, their defense is what's carried them so far. They're only giving up 15.5 points per game against, and they feature a run-first offense. Hopefully they'll be able to grind out some running plays and keep Perry's high-powered offense off the field. Follow us on Twitter at #NEOVarsity and #FNHuddle for game updates and score updates as they happen.
All right, thanks so much, Bill. As we get close to the bottom of the hour, 7:30, I want to remind you that you can check out games tonight live over on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. 3 of them, depending on where you are in the state. Southwest Ohio viewers will see Sycamore and St. Xavier. Central Ohio viewers get Pickerington Central against Wayne, and then Northeast Ohio viewers will see St. Ignatius and St. Edward. Speaking of that game, let's get more on it from Matt Gould. Matt?
Coming from Bedford's Bearcat Stadium for Friday Night Huddle and Cleveland.com, I am Matt Gould, where the hot chocolate is not selling well tonight. They are losing sales there for the Division I, Region 1 championship game between the St. Edward Eagles, the number 2 seed at a 9-2 record, and the 11-1 St. Ignatius Wildcats, who are the 4th seed in this region, but they enter this one as favorites, courtesy of their 34-7 win 3 weeks ago at First Energy Stadium. We're about 30 minutes to kickoff, and St. Ignatius's defense just arrived. Their team defensive bus broke down on the way over. Just got in probably at 6:55 to be precise. Walked in with their pads and everything, so they're getting suited up, ready to go. That's a defense that's given up only 66 yards rushing per game this season, and that's going to be the challenge that awaits the St. Edward offense, which has started to kick things in gear the last 2 weeks with running back Curtis Zalesta and quarterback Kevin Kramer. They've scored wins against Euclid in the first round and a 41-35 victory last week against Stowe, who they beat last year in the state semifinals, back when we just had 2 super regions. Of course, this year we're back to the 4 regions set up for Division I, and that's where we stand. Looking at St. Ignatius, they've scored 2 impressive victories to start this postseason. Shut out Massillon Jackson, which was off to a fast start this year. Beat them 35-0 in the playoff opener. And then last week took down the number 1 seed, the Solon Comets, 31-17. And that's where we stand tonight, as they will have their rematch. The winner will face either Lorain or Olentangy Liberty, who are playing down in Mansfield tonight. So keep it tuned on Twitter or on Friday Night Huddle on cleveland.com. I'm Matt Gould at MGOUL on Twitter, and I'll have the updates from this one throughout the night.
All right, thanks, Matt. We will check back in with you in a little bit. If you look at the Region 1 bracket, something that Matt mentioned that sort of makes tonight a little more fun, that the OHSAA actually in 6 of the 7 divisions announced who the pairings will be next week. The only one that we don't know is Division 2, but we know here that it's going to be Region 1 against Region 2, so the winner of this gets Olentangy Liberty or Lorain. As we take a look at how these 2 teams got here, and we talked about this matchup a little bit earlier on at the top of the show, St. Ignatius knocking off the 1 seed Solon last week, while St. Edward sort of hold and serve in all of their games as they beat Stowe Monroe Falls.
the key tonight is going to be for St. Edward, don't make mistakes. Because when you make mistakes against St. Ignatius, you kind of get punished for those mistakes. They can hold the football if they want to. They can do a lot of different things. Against Stowe last week, it was mistakes that kind of helped St. Edward get to this game because they were outgained. They were outgained big in the second half, but Stowe made a bunch of mistakes early that allowed St. Edward to build a big lead. They had a field goal that was blocked at St. Edward that gave Stowe an opportunity to maybe tie that game before the game-ending sack. So St. Edward has seen what happens when a team makes mistakes and what you can do. St. Ignatius will punish you when you make mistakes, so that's really going to be the key tonight for the Eagles.
I think for St. Ed's, it's what offense is going to show up here. And they lost a lot from last year's team, and one of the guys was Cole Guest, who's playing at Indiana, and they lost their starting quarterback as well. But if you talk about some of their high-profile matchups, 10 or fewer points against Hoban, against Elder, and against St. Ignatius. Now, last week, they were able to score a bunch, 41 against Stowe. Can they bring that kind of offense against St. Ignatius? Because that's what it's going to take. Because the Wildcats, as much as we talk about their defense, and their defense has been fantastic all year long, they control the line of scrimmage offensively. They protect their quarterback, dual-threat quarterback in Ryan. And then Bobinski, the running back who has taken over for Jimmy Andrews, is somebody who has emerged as one of the top playmakers in Northeast Ohio throughout the postseason. So St. Ed's, this is not a game that they're going to be able to win 10-7 or 14-7. Their offense is going to have to be like the offense we saw last week against Stowe. And the question is, when the step up in competition has been there, they haven't been able to answer that question.
Guys, the last two times St. Ignatius did not make the playoffs, they followed it up the following year by winning a state title in 1988 and 2011. Trying to make it 3 in a row there. Well, guess what? We've passed the bottom of the hour. That means games are kicking off all across the state. Enough of the previews. Let's play football now. All right, when we come back, we're going to keep taking you around the state as regional final Friday night continues. You're watching Friday Night Huddle.
Before I decided to go back to Tri-C to become a nurse, I was a stay-at-home mom. Absolutely wanted to be a pediatric nurse. I love taking care of kids. If you're thinking about changing your career or changing your path, go to Cuyahoga Community College. I feel like I'm in a great place in my life. I have 3 great kids. I have a great job that I love. I could not have done it without Tri-C. My name's Diana Geary. I earned my nursing degree from Cuyahoga Community College.
Just as athletes need proper sleep for optimum performance, so do fans. To be your best, you need your rest on a properly fitted mattress from Mattress Warehouse. A good night's sleep on the right mattress prepares you for whatever the day throws at you. Visit Mattress Warehouse for a custom sleep assessment, and we'll help you find the right mattress for a great night's sleep and a productive day. Sleep like a champion, play like a champion with the perfect mattress from Mattress Warehouse.
Wednesday nights, more sports and Les Levine is live at 6. Then at 7, Access Crew SC. And at 7:30, High School Blitz Preview. It all starts Wednesday night at 6. Follow us on social media at TWC Sports OH. Across town and across the region, this is where fans belong. Time Warner Cable, Sports Channel.
The Emmy Award-winning High School Sports Insider features Ohio's best high school sports stories. For 17 years, the High School Sports Insider has been spotlighting role model students, outstanding athletes, and the Buckeye State's best teams. In-depth features from all sports, all school year long. For the best high school sports coverage, make sure you tune into the High School Sports Insider each and every week on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
As World Heavyweight Champion, Clevelander, and spokesman for Nature Stone, we'd like to present you with our own award.
Wow, it's awesome.
We had it made ourselves. It's made of...
Not the award, the floor.
Oh, it's Nature Stone.
Installed over concrete, Nature Stone flooring is tough, durable, long-lasting, and beautiful. Act now and get up to 50% off.
This is the only time you'll see me on the floor.
To schedule your free in-home consultation, go to naturestone.com today.
Football fans, huddle up. Friday nights are about to change forever with Friday Night Huddle. From pregame to postgame and everything in between, Friday Night Huddle is the place for Ohio football action. Combining the resources of cleveland.com, Classic Teleproductions, and Time Warner Cable Sports Channel, Friday Night Huddle gives you unprecedented coverage. You can be part of the action. Get updates as they happen. On cable, online, and on point. Friday Night Huddle.
There is a place where dreams arise. Stars are born. And greatness is made. What you live for lives here. Time Warner Cable Sports Channel.
Hi, I'm Kristen Affini, and here in Twinsburg, the Hudson Marching Band is on behind me playing their American band, and I cannot wait to see them at halftime if they sound this good for a pregame. Hudson is a non-competition band, but they're all for the Friday nights, as you can hear behind me.
All right, thanks, Krista. Hey, you know what? That fun part about advancing so far into the playoffs, not only for the players, but those bands get to keep playing all the time, too.
Krista's been with us throughout, following a different band every single week. And anybody who's ever driven around the Hudson area has seen the Loud is Good stickers from the band parents. They are a loud, fun band to watch.
Games getting started all across the region, or all across the state, I should say. LaSalle in their game down south against Miamisburg, they are already moving. They're at the 15-yard line as they try to punch in. The defending state champs trying to go for the first score down there in Division II. Meanwhile, Olentangy Liberty with the ball and made a couple nice catches so far against Lorain. We talked a little bit about that game. All right, game's kicking off right around now. Always talk about need to get off to a hot start. Don't want to have to play from behind. Is there a matchup really that you look at that says, all right, guys, need to start well in order to get things going?
I think Hudson.
Hudson?
I think Hudson actually would do well to get off to a good start.
Well, their band got it going well. So.
But they're fine if they don't get off to a good start. They have shown that.
That's true, but we've seen what Warren Harding can do when things kind of snowball. If you let that offense of Warren Harding snowball, if you let Lynn Bowden get going a little bit, you could find yourself in some trouble, because if you're Hudson, you want to keep it close, but you don't want to fall down by 2 or 3 scores against this team and let them kind of play free and easy.
Guys, the team that stands out to me is Olmsted Falls. You talk about a team that's equipped to come from behind and other teams that aren't equipped to come from behind. I would say Olmsted Falls doesn't appear to be a team that's equipped to come from behind, because so far in the postseason, they've got 60 yards passing. That's in 2 games so far. So you're talking about what they want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to control the clock. They want to limit turnovers. They want to hand the ball off to Spencer Linville. And sometimes when you get down in the regional finals, you start to have that uh-oh moment. Like, oh, no, we're already behind. Do we have to abandon who we are? And some coaches are good about, we're just going to stick to who we are. We're going to keep going with this. Other coaches, they start to get a little bit panicky, and they say, okay, we've got to come from behind. We got to score quick so that we can get some momentum going here.
One game that we haven't talked about really yet in Division II is New Albany against Massillon Perry. New Albany started the season 1-3, but here they are in regional final weekend going against a top seed in the Perry Panthers. It certainly looks like a mismatch on paper. From what you know about Perry, how can we sort of expect this game to play out?
Oh, well, you look at Perry, they were the #1 seed. They lost twice. They were both early in the season to Canton Central Catholic and then to Jackson. And Canton Central Catholic is 8-3. Jackson 7-4. So they've lost really only to good teams. Jackson, a Division I team as well. So for Perry, it's you talk about momentum so much in a team that hasn't lost in a while, and that's kind of the team that the Perry Panthers are. They've just been consistent ever since they got off to that 2-2 start. All they've done is win since then, and you like to see that out of a team.
I think Dan mentioned something that is so fascinating when you talk about these two teams. For Perry, and this is no disrespect to New Albany at all, I think Perry feels like throughout the course of the regular season, they've played a team better than New Albany. For New Albany, this is the toughest test so far this year, and are they ready for this kind of challenge against the Panthers?
This is another 1-3 matchup, 11 of them going on across the state today and tomorrow. New Albany They've won 8 in a row ever since, or I should say, 8 in a row ever since they started the season, 1-3, including a win over 7-seed Dublin Scioto last week in the regional semifinals. They started out by beating West by a 31-0 score in the first round of the playoffs. So the Eagles certainly hitting their stride after losses in the first 4 weeks to Reynoldsburg, Hilliard Bradley, and Gahanna Lincoln. None of those teams ended up making the playoffs. New Albany turned things around, and here they are as well. All right, so games getting underway. St. Ignatius, St. Ed's, obviously that's the big one that I'd say we're probably keeping our eye on.
You know what?
Yep.
And you're talking about teams that have to get off to a good start. I would say that it's imperative for St. Ed's too, because if you go back to the first meeting between the two teams at First Energy Stadium, St. Ed's drove the ball right down the field against St. Ignatius. They get to the 1-yard line, and they get stuffed on 4th and goal. So for St. Ed's, given the way that that game went and the fact that they couldn't even pick up a first down after that first drive, I think it would be very, very beneficial to them to see that their offense can move the ball against St. Ignatius rather than have a duplicate of what happened in the first meeting between the two teams.
You guys talked earlier about Lynn Bowden on Warren G. Harding. Well, guess what? He's already up to some good. Let's head out to the field. Warren G. Harding taking on Hudson, and Lynn Bowden getting it done from long distance as we head to the field. This one, a 73-yard touchdown run, putting Harding up 7-0 on Hudson.
Just leaving guys behind too. I mean, that speed, and you can see the size, that nice easy stride. You see why he's so good at this and why he's able to break those big runs once he gets out into the open field.
And Hudson's sitting there saying, "No biggie, no problem. We've got him right where we want him.
Right where we want him.
We're trailing."
What do they have to do though in order to keep Bowden contained? If they can,
don't let him have the football, right? Try and control the clock a little bit. Try and keep that offense off the field. Just make sure that Lynn Bowden, because you've seen how quickly he can strike. So the fewer opportunities that you give him to do that, and the fewer opportunities you give him to beat you in the multiple ways that he could beat you, I think that's what they have to do: control the football and don't panic. Okay, he broke off a big run. He does that to everybody. Come out and be who you are.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, can he pass the ball? Yes, we have seen that. But is he more comfortable as a runner? Yes. So if it's possible for Hudson, and again, it's very, very difficult because we're talking about somebody who's going to be in the running for Mr. Football. He might even be the front runner for Mr. Football. But try and make him a passer if it's even possible, because it seems like he's much more comfortable running the football.
All right, well, games, other scores happen coming in as we speak. Anthony Wayne takes a 7-0 lead over Olmsted Falls. Evan Brown, an 11-yard touchdown run for them. Meanwhile, we talked about Olentangy Liberty driving against Lorain. Well, that drive ends in a missed field goal, so the Patriots cannot get on the board, and Lorain takes over trying to get the first score of that game. All right.
Might be something that not a lot of people are talking about, guys. It's just how good Lorain's defense has been recently. You talk about 7 against Bedford, 13 against Cleveland Heights, 14 in back-to-back playoff games. So the Titans have shown that they can play some defense against some really good offenses.
Looks like the Anthony Wayne touchdown there.
There you have it. They're on the board, 7-0 against Olmsted Falls. That one's still in the first quarter of play. Game sort of moving towards the middle of the first quarter as we just keep rolling along.
That game might be close to halftime by now. Who knows?
We are with you until 11 o'clock tonight right here on cleveland.com in Friday Night Huddle. And we talked about St. Ignatius. We talked about Olentangy, Liberty, Lorain. How about a little bit about the game down south in Region 3, Huber Heights, Wayne, and Pickerington Central. Wayne has had its way with Central Ohio opponents in the playoffs. I believe it's been since 2013, the last time that they lost to a Central Ohio team. That was Hilliard Davidson way back when. Since then, they've really started to roll. They picked up a big win last week in the regional semifinals over Dublin Kaufman, 52-10 in that one. They're certainly a force to be reckoned with. Pickerington Central sort of back and forth all season. Yeah. They beat their rival last week, Pickerington North, but they're going to have their hands full this week against a powerhouse in Jay Mitten's team.
Yeah, and the only team, though, that Pickerington Central has lost to is Upper Arlington, and that was in overtime. So you kind of look at that resume and say, all right, they're pretty good. But on the other side, Wayne, a team that we haven't talked about much, they come up every week in the Super 25, back when we were doing the Super 25 during the regular season, and it's kind of, all right, yeah, there's Wayne, whatever. And all they do is keep winning. They won 52-10 last week, like you said, in a playoff game, a late round playoff game, the second round playoff game. So that's an impressive football team that I think a lot of people have sort of, I don't know if they've overlooked them, but they just haven't paid a lot of attention to them.
They have, and they deserve the kind of attention. They're that team that's standing over there in the corner saying, hey guys, talk about us.
Don't forget us.
I know you're talking about Lorain. I know you're talking about St. Ed's and St. Ignatius, but we got to the state championship game last year, and we haven't lost this year. Their only close game has been a tie. They tied at the beginning of the season, and that was some interesting circumstances around that. This is a team that all season long, they've been overlooked. And I think part of it is because they don't have that signature win, that one that really stands out, catches your attention. And they also lost some pieces from last year's team that got to the state title game against St. Ed's. But they have shown that they deserve the kind of recognition that the other teams from Division I are getting.
Let's face it, too. No Division I team in the Dayton area has ever won a state title. And until they do, there's sort of that stigma on them that maybe that area just doesn't produce the type of football that the rest of the state does. But we've certainly seen the history with Wayne, Braxton Miller there. You know, guys, they've certainly produced plenty of talent to at least put teams in contention to win.
And one way to get noticed is 104-17 in your first two playoff games.
Yeah.
That's what they've been able to do against Lancaster and then against Dublin-Kaufman last week.
And you mentioned Dublin-Kaufman. That's a team that was deep into the season, hadn't lost any games until Davidson beat them, I believe, in week 8, something like that. So Dublin-Kaufman certainly no rollover, although Wayne made him look like that. On the other side, Pickerington Central, their quarterback Darius Coker, he's a guy to watch out for. Running back Morgan Ellison. They certainly have the offensive attack. Last week in the first quarter against Pickerington North, each of them rolled off runs of more than 80 yards. Coker's was 80, Ellison's 85 to get Pickerington Central an early lead that they never looked back from. It was a sloppy game, and that's going to be something that this week they can't turn the ball over against Wayne because they're gonna pay for that.
It's getting to that point too where even if you're a really good team, you can't overcome turnovers because you're playing another really good team on the other side. We talked about it with St. Ed's and St. Ignatius. You're always going to be facing a team that is going to be able to punish you if you turn the football over. Maybe even going back to week 1 of the playoffs, you could turn the ball over a little bit, have some empty possessions, it wouldn't cost you. But we're so late now into November that you've got to be careful with the football and you've got to make sure that you aren't making any big mistakes.
All right, let's take a look in. We've talked a lot about St. Ignatius, St. Ed's. They are underway in the first quarter as we go there live. Ignatius with the ball as the run goes up the middle. No score still in this one. We've talked so much about Ignatius' defense, but on offense here, what do you look for?
Well, this is what they do. They run behind the big offensive line, the offensive line that's probably the best in Northeast Ohio. And when you've got an offense like that that's creating those kinds of holes, I mean, just that run right there, it took about 3-4 yards before a St. Ed's defender actually touched the running back. It's like watching Ezekiel Elliott run behind the Dallas Cowboys line.
And it's smart running too because he gets the handoff and Bobinski just kind of gets to choose where he wants to go. He kind of gets to decide, all right, do I want to bump outside? Do I want to go up the middle? There's a lot of different options for him on those runs, and he's very patient and he picks the right one.
And he's a guy that we feel like we hear about week in and week out putting up big numbers, and you got to credit the line because, they're taking does a lot of the work. They go back to Babinski, gets down near the goal line. Looks like he's just about inside the 2. Did pick up a first down there, so Ignatius getting close to being the first one on the board, but hey, until you get in, no points yet.
And Babinski is the guy who has replaced Jimmy Andrews. Coming into the year, it was supposed to be the senior Jimmy Andrews. Babinski was going to be the change of pace back, the guy who comes on the field when Andrews needs a break. Babinski has been forced into this feature back role, and so far in the postseason, he's emerged as one of the top playmakers. And really, his coming out party was against St. Ed's at First Energy Stadium. They simply could not stop the kid.
And what Ignatius is doing right now, too, with this run game is they're going to make St. Edward adjust. Whether they score here and there they go into the end zone, St. Edward is going to have to make an adjustment because they can't stop that run attack. So that's going to open some things up now for Patrick Ryan in the play action game. And at some point tonight, St. Ignatius is going to be able to take a shot. And I'm curious, unless they just blow this thing open early with the run game, I'm curious to see when they do kind of take that shot off of play action.
Yeah, I mean, St. Ed's does not have the player that can create havoc in the front four this year like they had the last couple of years with Michael O'Malley. And that was always the thing for St. Ed's the last couple of years, is that they could rely on their offensive line and their defensive line. They didn't have to blitz. They could play certain kinds of coverages because their front four could get enough pressure because of Michael O'Malley, one of the best defensive players. He's no longer around, and they just haven't had that other guy emerge as the one who's going to occupy blocks or the one who's just going to create havoc in the backfield. And it's been a problem for St. Ed's. And if you want to win a state championship, you have to have one of those kinds of guys.
You talk about Patrick Ryan. Is he a guy that can beat you with his arm?
He showed that against a number of teams throughout the course of the year. I think he is that kind of guy. And look, that was a question for St. Ignatius coming into the year. We look at St. Ignatius now as a team that is a legitimate state title contender. They weren't that at the beginning of the year. That wasn't the perception of them. Chuck Kyle even talked about that a couple of weeks ago, saying that we flew under the radar. We're St. Ignatius, and we flew under the radar. But the reason for that is because one of the questions that they had was at quarterback. But as the season got on, Patrick Ryan got more comfortable. He seemed to have command of the offense. And the great thing for him, I think, is that he's not asked to do a ton for St. Ignatius. So he's being put in a position where he can flourish, succeed, and be comfortable.
All right, as we flip the sides of the ball here, and Ed's getting the ball on the kickoff, they'll take over at about the 18-yard line. Offensively for St. Ed's, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Chris, that this isn't going to be a game that they're going to win 14-7.
Right.
Can they get into a track meet with these guys?
Well, they couldn't in the first meeting between the two teams. It pains me as a St. Ed's grad, and I feel like I have to talk about St. Ignatius like Ohio State talks about that team up north. Ohio State fans calls Michigan that team up north. Back when I was in high school, St. Ignatius was that team across from Wendy's. That's how we referred to them. But look, in the first meeting between the two teams, St. Ed's couldn't even pick up a first down, let alone get on St. Ignatius' side of the field after their first drive. So it's hard for me to say, yes, St. Ed's offense is ready for this kind of defense against St. Ignatius when they showed no signs of that in the first meeting between the two teams. Now, they made a lot of progress last week against Stowe. Stowe, very stingy defense, talented defense, so they need that kind of offense to carry over. But as good as Stowe's defense is, Dan, and you know Stowe very, very well, they're not this St. Ignatius defense. No. The St. Ignatius defense, I would put it up there with any defense in all of Ohio. That's how good they've played this year.
And we saw it on those first two plays, right? The first play was a good game, but it was a broken play. The quarterback goes one way, there was a defender there. He's able to go the other way and gain yardage. Well, this time, he's not able to bounce it back. He goes the way the play is designed, and there's just blue shirts everywhere. So you can see the problems that St. Edward is going to have. They're going to have to figure out a way to get the ball down the field and maybe kind of loosen up this St. Ignatius defense a little bit.
Kevin Kramer, the St. Edward quarterback, he picked up 8 yards on that broken play in the first play, but then lost a yard the second one, so they face 3rd and 4 here with 4.5 minutes to go.
And I mean, you hate to go 3 and out. You hate to respond to that drive by going 3 and out, and it looks like they're going to be able to sustain this.
Well, is this what we should expect a lot from them? They can keep it in Kramer's hands to run the ball.
Yeah, well, that's what they're going to try and do. That's what they did in the first meeting of the postseason against Euclid. That's what they did last week against Stowe. This is a team that has leaned on Curtis Zalesta, who has taken over for Cole Guest, and this is a team that is using the dual threat capabilities of Kevin Kramer. You know, something that they had last year, Jimmy Keefe, he set a record in the state championship game for passing yardage. Kramer's a different kind of quarterback. The problem is, playing against St. Ignatius, the Wildcats allow about 60 yards rushing per game. The thing that St. Ed's wants to do is run the ball. So the question is, at what point does St. Ed say, we're going to have to see if Kevin Kramer can make some throws down the field, something that we had last year winning a state championship.
You lose a guy like Cole Guest. I mean, how much does that change your offense? He is such a talent, and you go off to play at a Division I program like that.
He was incredible. I mean, he could do everything. He could catch the ball. He could run the ball. He looked. Sometimes you go watch guys play, and you know they're Division I guys, and maybe for whatever reason they don't stand out in that particular game that you watch them. Every time you watched Cole Guest last year, you say, okay, I get it.
Right.
I see what it is that Division I schools see in this kid. I see why he's going to Indiana. It's a no-brainer. And to lose that kind of talent, and you mentioned Michael O'Malley as well, and
right.
The kind of talent they've lost, that's difficult to kind of recover from.
Cole Guest was the centerpiece of St. Ed's offense for back-to-back state championships. Yeah, they had the offensive line. Yes, they had the defense with Michael O'Malley and Tony Butler. And yes, they had some playmakers on the outside. But the one consistent thing that they could rely on was Cole Guest getting them out of a bad situation, Cole Guest's game-breaking speed. He was the centerpiece of their offense for back-to-back state title runs. So if you want to know how important he was, there's your answer right there. You don't, even though you're St. Ed's and even though you're St. Ignatius, you can't take those kinds of players that come through your program for granted. And I think St. Ed's is understanding just if they did take him for granted, just how much he meant to that program.
All right, 7-0 St. Ignatius there late in the first quarter. We'll certainly keep tabs on that game all night long. A couple other score updates to let you know about. We mentioned that Anthony Wayne jumped out to a 7-0 lead. Olmsted Falls has responded. That game now tied at 7. Meanwhile, Hudson has gotten the board with a field goal, so they now trail Harding 7-3. And at the end of the first quarter, New Albany and Perry scoreless. So some low-scoring games as we get going on this beautiful night where you thought maybe we'd see some offense going, huh?
Well, come on, this is the regional finals. You better be able to play some defense if you want to win in the regional finals. This is about the time of year where you would think the defenses would start to step up and maybe stiffen a little bit.
All right, with one Division I game that we haven't talked about yet, the one way down in southwest Ohio, the Region 4 game between a 7 seed and a 5 seed. Sycamore, the 7 seed, against St. Xavier, the 5 seed, a team that entered the playoffs with a 5-5 record, or 6-4. They won their last game of the season to get in. An interesting matchup. Let's go back to, before we talk about that, let's head back to St. Ignatius and St. Ed's in Bedford. St. Ed's moving down the field. We jump away and they keep moving. Chris is probably thinking, hey, let's not show any more of this. They're moving pretty well.
And look, good offensive line play. Kind of giving St. Ignatius a little bit of what they do to other teams, opening up holes for the running back.
That was Curtis Celesta with the run to the right side, setting up a pretty good opportunity for the Eagles, except the old Henke comes out.
Maybe not such good offensive line play.
I mean, that's the thing. Now you're talking about first and long in a goal-to-go situation against such a stout defense. Okay, maybe not. Maybe they're going to call that one against St. Ignatius.
Yeah, it looks like
he just signaled the other way.
Yeah.
But this would be important for St. Ed's to get 7. Like, you can't get 3 and you can't get 0 because it's so hard to say that one play changed the complexion of a game when there's so much time in a football game to come from behind. But St. Ed's getting stuffed on 4th and goal at the 1-yard line against St. Ignatius in the first meeting between the two teams on their first drive. That's one of those kinds of things where the other team will get a psychological advantage on you.
Certainly an interesting call there. It's not very often that you see a chop block against the defense.
And Coach Kyle's like, huh?
He's saying,
he's saying the same thing
I've been around for a long time. I haven't seen one of those. Okay, I guess it can happen. So it sets up 1st and goal for St. Edward. They'll put the ball, I believe, inside the 5-yard line. So certainly a good opportunity to respond. It looks like it's right on the 5-yard line.
And you mentioned it, Chris. This is an opportunity for Eds because maybe they're thinking about that last game a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe they're thinking about what happened and how it just got away from them. So if they can get this thing to 7-7 nearing the end of the first quarter, I think you'll take that.
You also kind of see the plan for St. Ed's, trying to use some misdirection, trying to send guys in motion, just trying to get all of those bodies from St. Ignatius somewhere else other than the middle of the field.
Certainly sends a statement if somehow Ignatius is able to make that stop here and sort of get in the minds maybe of the Eagles players as well. Obviously, there's still 3 more opportunities here on 2nd and goal.
And it's still a big early moment, though. You don't want to put too much emphasis on a moment in the first quarter of a game, but this is a big early moment considering what happened a few weeks ago at First Energy Stadium.
And now you're talking about a 3rd and goal situation. You've got a quarterback who's a dual threat guy, but much more comfortable running the ball.
How about that shirt? Did you see that shirt that guy had on the sideline? That was like some airbrushed eagle.
All right, here's decision time for Coach Lombardo.
I mean, this is shades of the first game between the two teams where St. Ed's was able to get the ball down the field. They were churning out yards. They were picking up first downs, but then the field restricted so much, and they tried to impose their will against a more physical team.
We've seen run, whether it's been Zalesta or Kramer.
Right.
Is this the time? Could you at all see Lombardo pulling out the play action, see if he can slip a tight end into the end zone or something like that?
Kramer only threw 9 passes last week.
Yep.
Because
we'll
Ignatius
see.
is going to be stuffing the box here, expecting the inside run.
I mean, in the first meeting between the two teams, St. Ed's tried to run on 4th and goal and got stood up completely. I don't think you're going to be able to overpower the Wildcats. I do think that you have to give the quarterback a run-pass option here. Is that what they do best? No, not necessarily. But if you're trying to run the ball 4th and goal against a wall, I don't think that's going to work out all that well either.
It looks like somebody called a timeout.
Yeah, I was going to say, someone wants to think about it. And does it get
Ed's
to the...
trying to make a decision or what?
Does it get to the point, too, here, is, teams call timeout to think about this, that you can almost outsmart yourself. Well, hey, they're expecting this. We got to try this. And these two teams are so familiar with each other.
They are.
I think it's if you're St. Ignatius, obviously if you stop them on 4th down, that's a win. I think holding them to a field goal is a win here as well. I feel like if I'm Tom Lombardo and St. Edward, I want to go for it here. I'm willing to take that chance because I think even if you just end up with 3 points, St. Ignatius is coming away from that feeling like, all right, we won that series.
I mean, as much as I want to say it would be great to just put points on the board for the Eagles right now, I'm with you, Dan. This is not where field goals aren't going to win this game. You got to score some touchdowns here.
They are going to go for it as Kramer comes out with the offense. Mentioned early on, last play of the first quarter perhaps, but certainly very important. It will go Zalesta, and he walks into the end zone. And Edward, a extra point away from tying this game.
I think that's a big psychological boost because if they would have gotten stuffed and St. Ignatius would have been able to impose their will, just how that play happened, being able to run the ball, being able to stand up to that defensive line, being able to push one of those defenders into the end zone, I think that's a big thing for St. Ed's, just letting them know, hey, yes, it's very difficult to run against St. Ignatius. They only give up about 60 yards per game on the ground, but we were just able on 4th and 1 to impose our will against the Wildcats. I mean, that can be a boost for sure.
Great job. A couple guys pulling over and opening up that hole for him. That was a great play call there by Lombardo and his staff.
Extra point was good, so we are tied at 7. You mentioned we talked so much on the other side of the field about the offensive line for Ignatius. It felt like on those first few plays down inside the 10 there that it was Ignatius' defensive line that really got the push, but that was a wide open hole that Zalesta walked through.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of those cases where maybe you can't just line up and run straight at St. Ignatius. Maybe you do have to pull some guys, run some counters, try to do some things, get your offensive linemen on the move a little bit to try and open up some things against this defense.
But you also have a head coach showing faith in his offense and the offense rewarding that faith. So that's also really, really big because you know that every single one of those offensive linemen, they wanted to go for it. The quarterback wanted to go for it. The running back wanted to go for it. And you got a head coach who said, you know what, guys, I know what happened in the first meeting against St. Ignatius at First Energy Stadium, but I believe in you. I'm going to give you this chance. Prove me right. And they went out and did, and that's something that could carry over to the rest of the game.
We will stick with this game for a lot of the evening here, but let's change our attention right now to Division 6. We mentioned the rematch between Kirtland and Cuyahoga Heights. Cuyahoga Heights, the 1 seed, going up against 3 seed Kirtland. Brian Kaiser is there and joins us on the phone. Brian, what's the update from that game?
3 punts from both teams and 2 interceptions.